Good morning, church. Stand to your feet if you're able. If you're out in the foyer, come on in and join us. If you're in the cafe and watching us on the TV, it's time to get started. For those watching online, hello, good morning. Glad you're joining us. It is good to be here. It is always good to be with family. Father, we just come before you this morning, grateful, Father, that you are with us wherever we go, God. You will never forsake or abandon us, God. We're grateful, God, that we are yours and you are ours, God. God, I pray that as we go into this time of singing praise and songs, Lord, I just pray that our hearts would be unified with yours, that your heart would be unified with ours, God, that we would see you as you see us, God. God, I pray that you would be glorified in everything that we say and do this morning. In your name we pray. Amen. Come and join. Come and join in the song ears to hear you, God. We just need our hearts to be searching for you, Jesus. Meet us here in this place, Lord. We look to you alone, God. We search for you alone, God. Come satisfy the longing in our hearts to see you. Satisfy the longing in our hearts to hear you, God. Satisfy the longing in our hearts, God, to feel your nearness. Caught up in your praises. I just want everything, God. So in return, God, we just give you our all this morning. God, I pray that we would be a people that doesn't hold anything back from you, God. The same way you didn't hold back your love from us, God, when we least deserved it. You still gave us your everything, God. I pray that we would see that, God, and in return, give you everything, God, every part of us. The easy parts, the hard parts, the ugly parts, God, every part of us. Every part of us, God, every part of me is yours. We surrender it all to you, God. You've been so good, Lord. As we go into this time of communion, it's just a symbol of the remembering that God gave us his everything. He gave us his all. He gave us all that he had, and all that he had was everything to him, and all that he had was Jesus. So as we go into this time of communion and remembering all that God gave, I want to challenge you, church, to think of all that you're still holding back from him. And ask God for help to give it back to him, to give it to him. He's worthy of it all. It doesn't matter if it's broken or tainted or dark, or it doesn't matter if it's imperfect. He doesn't care. Because it's you. And to him it's beautiful. To him you are beautiful. We do communion a little bit different here. For those of you that are new or it's your first time with us, we do communion in groups and community. We're going to encourage you to do groups of 3 or 4 to gather together. We'll have some instructions on the screen up here, a scripture you read, and then you'll pray and whatnot. If you didn't get your sacraments, they're in the back on that little table right when you walk in. Feel free. Also, if you see anyone that's off by themselves and doesn't have a group, please include them so nobody is left alone. Ready, set, go.
Good morning. Wow, that's loud. Good morning, generations. How are we doing this morning? I know I just woke you up. If you don't know me, my name's Jackson. I get the honor of leading the youth here at Generations, or helping lead the youth alongside Pastor Noah. I have a few short announcements for you guys this morning, but first, if it is your first time here, we ask that you fill out the Connect card on the seat in front of you. We as a church just want to get to know you a little better and how we can better serve you. We ask that after service you turn that into our resource center in the back. I believe Shelly's back there today, and we have an awesome gift waiting for you. So for our first announcement, we are still looking for VBS volunteers. Now, if you don't know what VBS is, it's an event for the kids this summer. It's called Vacation Bible School, and we are looking for volunteers to run the different sections of VBS. If you're interested in volunteering, we ask that you please connect with Lisa Jones. She's like the head coordinator of VBS, and she'll get you connected. It's an amazing event for the kids of the church as well as San Bernardino. We get a wide variety of kids who come from outside the church, and it's just a great time. I helped out last year with games, and it was a blast. Second announcement we have is if you're interested in joining a community group, we have here at Generations a wide variety of community groups spreading from golf, which is the best one in my opinion, to quilting, which is awesome too. Shout out to the quilting group. You guys are awesome. But if you are interested in joining a community group but don't really know where to start, we are having a community group luncheon on June 30th where we'll have all the leaders of the community groups here at Generations to speak a little bit about what their group is and how they function, and you can connect with the leaders and see which ones you're interested in, see if you want to join any of them. And for our third announcement we have is save your spring cleaning items. I know I don't do a lot of spring cleaning, but other people do. And so if you do spring cleaning and you're interested in getting rid of some stuff, the youth here at Generations is having a spring yard sale on June 15th. And if you have things you're ready to let go, I know I have some stuff I need to let go. We urge you to bring them here to support our yard sale. That will be on June 15th. You can start bringing items starting next Sunday after church, June 9th. So that's all the announcements I have for you all this morning. I'm going to pass it over to Pastor Andrew.
Thanks, Jackson. Yeah, if you have any emotional baggage you're trying to get rid of, that's what we're talking about today. But the rest of your baggage, bring to our yard sale and help us make some money to send kids to. Actually, on that note, our camp that we were going to got canceled this summer. It's a kind of a bummer thing with everything going on. But we do have a fall retreat planned for the youth with actually the youth all across our region, so all the way up the coast to Washington. A couple other states will be gathering in Lodi, California in November. And so we're going to still do the fundraiser to help send kids to that instead. So as you get information, some of your parents are like, so supposedly our kids are going to camp, but I have no idea anything about that. That's why. We're trying to find something else, and we decided let's just put all that towards sending our kids there. And it'll actually be a really good time there as well. So I was looking at facts and information about what it means to have good friends or to have good, meaningful connection. And I found some things that I felt were very true and a little bit funny. So I want to start off there today and with 7 characteristics of a good friend with some humor. Okay, so the first one is that only real friends tell you when your face is dirty. Right? It's kind of true, right? Because if someone else is like, I don't want to say anything, but real friends like, dude, your face is a little messed up. Right? Secondly, our friends pick us up when we fall. Right? But if they can't pick us up, they just lie down and laugh with us, right? Thirdly, if you have to clean your house before they come over, they're probably not your friend. Right? Is that true? Right? Because the friends just show up, you don't clean anything. You probably have friends that you're like, we'll be friends until we're old and senile, and then we'll be new friends every time we meet. That's a good thing. Good friends don't let friends do stupid things alone, right? Now friends buy you lunch, but good friends eat your lunch, This has happened. I had David here, my buddy, a couple weeks ago. He's like one of my best friends from back in Iowa. He was out visiting, and we had leftovers from Mexican, and we were eating it the next day. And I had brought home some salsa that like I enjoy and had on my plate. And I was on the phone with Victoria, and I pointed out the salsa and pointed at his food. Like, if you want to use some salsa, it's here. And I turn around and I look back, and he has my food in his hand, dipped in my salsa, and like half of it in his mouth already. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? He's like, I thought that's what. I'm like, no, never. Does that make sense? And the last thing is friends comfort you with comforting words. Best friends comfort you with comforting words too, and sarcasm, right? Anybody else have sarcastic friends? Am I your sarcastic friend? Okay. Hey, we have been in our series, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. And we are taking a deeper look into what our lives can be if we really let God transform us completely. Not just on our surface levels, not just transform us in our spirituality, but looking at what it really means to experience life and life to the fullness when we let Him transform our full life. Right? Last week we ended the message with this verse from Solomon in Ecclesiastes 4, verse 7. It starts with, I observed yet another example of something meaningless under the sun. And this is the case of a man who is all alone, without a child or a brother, yet who works hard to gain as much wealth as he can. But then he asks himself, who am I working for? Why am I giving up so much pleasure now? It's all so meaningless and depressing. Verse 9, 2 people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, another person can reach out and help, but someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, 2 people lying close to each other can keep each other warm, but how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer, and 3 are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. Solomon's saying life alone is meaningless because we were made for connection. We were made for others, and we were made for deep connection, right? Solomon clarifies here that this is not just an acquaintanceship, right? These are people who care about keeping you alive, that they're willing to help you succeed, that when you fall, they're picking you back up, that they're willing to fight with you whatever your battle is and stand back to back, and maybe multiples of you come together to succeed over the battles of your life. Right? That's not an acquaintance. That is a deep friendship. Now, we often hear this verse read at weddings, right, describing a marriage and, the bride and the groom and God being the third part of the braided cord, and they do a nice little, braided knot on the fancy board that they're going to hang in their home. And while that is true and great, right, we should all have God interwoven into our marriages to help us be more strengthened. This isn't what Solomon was talking about here. He was talking about friendship. He was talking about family. He was talking about community, something much deeper that we all need. Because throughout Ecclesiastes, when I was younger, I read Ecclesiastes, and I was like, this is a really boring book. I don't understand what Solomon's talking about. Maybe some of you guys are like, I've never even read it because it's in the Old Testament. It's kind of short. It's short, so maybe start there, right? But Solomon is this guy who's known as the wisest person to have ever lived. He had this moment with God where God says, you can have whatever you want. And he sits and he ponders and he asks for wisdom. He doesn't ask for wealth. He doesn't ask for success or influence or power. He asks for wisdom. And because he did that, God gave him a lot of other things. But he's considered to be one of the wisest people who's ever lived because of that prayer and what God has given to him. And he writes Ecclesiastes. And multiple times through it, he talks about things that he's realized are meaningless. And every time it points to, what is meaningful besides our relationship with God? Our relationship with other people. Right? He says multiple times, I can't think of anything better to do with my life than to eat and be merry in the company of good friends. Right? And we have forgotten all about that, I feel like, as a culture. Right? We've been, for the last few decades, preaching and pursuing what what economists and many people refer to as hyper-individuality, not even just a little bit of individuality, but hyper-individuality. We've moved out of being people of our community, of knowing our neighbors and knowing the people that are in our lives, let alone building communities within our church and making people in our lives a priority. We've made us the priority. And the only thing that God ever said when he was looking over creation was that man was alone. This is not good. Right? And we get this other priority often that gets in the way. I just started talking about, and that's ourself. Right? Our pride, our self-centeredness, the things that we're trying to pursue to make our life better gets in the way of pursuing the other people as priority, the other people in our lives as maybe something a little bit higher than ourselves. Just as Solomon was saying there in Ecclesiastes, he's like, I looked and the saddest thing that was meaningless to me was a man who was all alone. Philippians 2:3-4 says, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble. Thinking of others is better than yourselves. Don't look out for only your own interests, but take an interest in others too. And David Brooks in the book, The Road to Character, examined several people who chose to embrace humility as the basis for becoming people of character. He says in his book, truly humble people are engaged in a great effort to magnify what is best in themselves and defeat what is worst, to become strong in the weak places. They start with an acute awareness of the bugs in their own nature. Brooks concluded that the struggle against the weakness in yourself is never a solitary struggle. No person can achieve self-mastery on his or her own. Individual will, their own reason, compassion, and character, they're not strong enough to consistently defeat selfishness, pride, greed, and self-deception. Everybody needs redemptive assistance from outside, from family, from friends, ancestors, rules, traditions, institutions, and for believers, God. We all need people to tell us when we are wrong, to advise us on how to do it right, to encourage, to support, to arouse, to cooperate, and inspire us along the way. Man, I feel like many of us we feel like, what is the meaning of life and things? It's because we don't have that good community. We don't have good friends. We don't have deep relationships of people that are inspiring us and encouraging us and advising us when we're doing things wrong. And we don't have a good enough relationship with them to hear their advice and to listen to them and heed to those things. And so we wander through life when it feels a little bit empty, because it is. God didn't make us to be alone. Paul in Colossians 3:12-14 says, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you have a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Man, we need to put into practice all of those things, right? Bearing with one another to fulfill the greatest commandment, right? Loving others and loving ourselves starts there with bearing with one another. Now, I believe that we cannot get to emotional, healthy spirituality without real commitments to community, without real commitments to one another. If we can't have deep relationships where people can speak into our lives, then we're never going to grow to emotional health, because it's one of the key parts of it. So how do we cultivate meaningful connection with others? Brene Brown, she's like this expert in vulnerability and relationships and emotions, and she's spent her whole life studying these things, and she's still in the process developing what she believes are the steps to meaningful connection. But in one of her latest books, Atlas of the Heart, she gives us 3 parts, 3 things that we need to have meaningful connection, and I find that they really line up with what God has asked of us when it comes to community. And so she defines the meaningful connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. I mean, just in that definition alone, I see things that God has called us to do, right? To recognize people's needs, to see people where they're at, to see them as he sees them in the way that he's seen us and in the way that he's valued us individually. We are supposed to take and see and value the other people around us. Right? I mean, it's very clear in Scripture that we weren't called to come and judge, but we were here to come and love. And that we're here to bear with one another. We're going to dig into what that bear with means a little bit more in a bit. But the first step, she said, in making meaningful connection is to be developing grounded confidence. Right? We cannot be a good friend and have good connections with other people if we are not the people that people want to be connected to. Right? And so many of us can look around and we're like, oh, nobody wants to be our friend. We have all these problems with everybody else, and we don't realize that we are actually the problem, that there's stuff in us that makes people go, I need to keep space. I can't connect with you fully because there's too much stuff going on there that you're not aware of. Right? Developing grounded confidence is driven by the commitment in ourselves to continue to learn and to improve ourselves. Fear tends to keep us from connecting here, right? Fear becomes the armor that we hide behind. Brene Brown refers to armor a lot of times in that the false identities that we put up so that we can hide behind them to protect what we feel about ourselves or our vulnerabilities. Now, she talks about near enemies and far enemies, and we're going to talk about them as we go through these skills. And a far enemy is the opposite of whatever skill we're trying to do. And those are pretty easy to understand, right? So if we're supposed to be developing grounded confidence, the far enemy is fragile self-worth, right? We don't feel that we are worth anything. That's the far enemy. Now, the near enemy is the thing that we often do that's really, really close to what we're supposed to be doing, but far enough away that's actually causing more problems. And we like to live in the near enemy camps, and you'll see that as we go through here, where it's like we're really close to doing what we're supposed to be doing, so it makes us feel good, but we don't actually have to do the hard work. Self-confidence for its near enemies are knowing and proving. Right? We are knowing and proving to other people, like we're quick to, I guess when people come into something that kind of hits at our self-worth, right? We are quick to try and prove that we are worth it, right? Prove our value. We're quick to jump to those things. Right? And knowing and proving are actually a function of low self-esteem, right? Because we don't, if you really felt you were self-confident and somebody came in and said something about you, you'd be like, yeah, I don't care, right? Not that you shouldn't care, but it doesn't devalue you or value you, and we should have that as Christians because our value comes from what God says, right? But we also need to hear what people say, and maybe we're to bring some our actions, I guess, and how we're living out life back into alignment. But proving to others that you are confident instead of just walking in your confidence is the near enemy. Fragile self-worth is the opposite, right? It's the far enemy of grounded confidence. And when we have a fragile self-worth, all we want to do is self-protect. We don't want people to get in here. We got to keep up the image that we're doing, and then that creates distance, and we can't build meaningful connection with people, right? And so, again, we find our grounded confidence in God, what he says about us. We talked about this in the week where we talked about shedding our false images, right? That it's not up to us to build our value. God has already created us with value and has spoken into your lives, and you are his child. You are loved by him. He gave his son for you, all these things. So your value is already marked, and nobody else can change that. And we find it there. And then from that, we should be able to walk in the confidence that, all right, I got some work to do to get the rest of me in alignment with that. And so I will continue to learn and continue to improve. Now, she lists several skills that we can start practicing and putting into our lives to help us develop grounded confidence. The first one is one we've been talking about, and that's knowing and applying the language of human experience and emotion, right? That you can freely share what you are feeling, what's really going inside of your life and what's causing it, and that you're able to be open to other people with it. If you have grounded confidence, you can freely share everything that's going on. Now, the far enemy, right, of protecting your self-worth shows up here when you just act out, right? When you're shutting things down, or you give up on things because you're like, I'd rather, instead of being real and being vulnerable and sharing these things, I'd rather just act out for no reason, or I'd rather shut down, or I'd rather quit. Now, the near enemy shows up by trying to shape our emotions or shape our experiences. And we do this a lot as Christians, and I don't think it's purposeful. I think we have an understanding of what we're supposed to look like as Christians, or what we believe about God, and we believe about things, so we shape our narrative, we shape our stories, we shape our experiences to keep this truth that we believe. And for example, just this past week, it's been in some ways just some rough things going on in my life, and it's not life-ending things, but it's just been a season of like, God, you could be doing things for me, and you just don't you're not showing up like I thought you would show up. And there's been all these opportunities, God, for you to prove how faithful you are, to show all these things, and you haven't. And so I was just really frustrated in that, and I was acting out, I guess, in no real other ways, by beating myself up. And what I was doing was I was shaping the narrative, because I couldn't come to a place where I would understand God being someone who's overlooked me, right? Or God is somebody who has failed me. And so instead, I decided that I needed to paint myself as a bad person, right? That it's probably because of my mistakes. It's probably because of the things I've messed up on that God is overlooking me. He's disciplining me. He's punishing me for these bad things. And I've shaped the narrative of my life, which isn't true, right? Because we know that God's loved me at my very worst moments, that he's come through for me, and he has saved me, and he's given everything for me. So it doesn't make sense for him to all of a sudden change his mind about that. But it was easier for me to beat myself up than it is for me to wrestle with the understanding that right now, what I thought God had for me is not what he has for me. Right? And so we shape our narratives of our lives all the time to try and hold these truths that we want to hold that seem easier to wrestle with than other things. And so we're not walking in grounded confidence when we are not sharing the real experiences of our lives. Right? Ephesians 4:25 says, so stop telling lies. Okay? Right? It's very clear. But let us tell our neighbors the truth, for we are all part of the same body. Right? We should be able to speak freely about what's going on in our lives and share the frustrations, and share our doubting, and share our questioning, and share our mixed emotions, instead of lying, because we are one body. Colossians 3:9 says it again, don't lie to each other, for you have stripped off your old sinful nature and all of its wicked deeds. Put on your new nature and be renewed as you learn to know your Creator and become like him. Again, this is in developing our skills of knowing and learning and improving. And so as we become the new creation that God has called us, we got to strip off the old ways and speak truth. The next skill is practicing courage, right? To not be afraid to share what's going on. The far enemy is choosing that armor to self-protect, or to choose comfort over courage, right? There's often where it's just like, it'd be more comfortable for me to not share. Right? Because as soon as I say this, people are going to get uncomfortable. As soon as I talk about this thing, it's going to be uncomfortable for a time. So instead of courage, we choose comfort. The near enemy is just not owning that we are hurting. It's not owning that we are in pain. It's not owning that we are fearful of something. This is everything is fine. Right? We like to live in that. We're like, I'm practicing courage because I'm declaring that everything's fine. But the reality is, it's a lot easier to say everything's fine than it is to say everything is not fine. The next skill is rumbling with our vulnerability. Being able to put down our guards and be authentic. Right? The far enemy is shutting down or acting out because we either trying to hide it and it bursts out of us, or instead of being honest, we just freak out to hopefully create distance. The near enemy of this is performing. Right? It's putting on the mask, doing what we think people want us to do, doing what we think is right instead of just living real and authentic. The problem is most people usually know when other people are performing. How many of you have I can usually tell when someone's being fake with me? All right, most of you can't. Okay, whoa. It's good to know. No, just kidding. Right, I think that especially people that are close to you, right, your spouse or best friends and stuff, you're like, that's not what's really going on, right? Because you can see it in other ways. But when that happens, guys, when you're performing instead of being real, that tells your relationship that you're in, that you're performing to, that you're not a person that they can trust. Right? Because and that you don't think that they can be trusted because you're performing. And that makes gaps in the relationship. It makes space where there shouldn't be space. And it pushes people away whether you're doing it on purpose or not. Right? What you're telling people is you don't want to dig deeper. What you're telling people is if they bring it up, because I would say most people could see it happening, and sometimes they don't say anything. Just like, all right, put on your act. I'll applaud when it's done. Make sure you bow. Right? Because they're like, you're just going to deny it if I bring it up. You're like, what's really going on there? No, everything's fine. And you're like, yeah, sure it is, and like you're going to deny it, so why say something? But then also, why go deep with someone who's not being real? It's hard to be friends with someone you don't know. The next skill is staying curious. Instead of hiding behind proving and knowing, it's staying open to learning, open to improving. Right? The far enemy shows itself by being disinterested, indifferent, or defensive. Right? About knowing yourself. I don't need to know that stuff. I'm fine as it is, things like that. Now, the near enemy shows itself here in staying curious by challenging or criticizing more than exploring and contributing. Right? This is that staying an emotional scientist versus staying an emotional judge when somebody is being real about things. You're just wanting to challenge and criticize the things that are happening instead of coming and helping them explore and contribute to something better. The next skill is practicing humility. Right? And it takes a lot of practice, right? Because I don't know anybody in here who's perfect in humility. If you are, would you raise your hand? It was a test, okay? All right. Eric, we'll talk later. I saw you raise your hand. Don't act like you better own it. That's what we're talking about, okay? Practicing humility, right? This is confidence in knowing who God made you to be, but not pride in it, not being prideful because of what he's done, and definitely not being prideful about who you have made yourself to be. Now, the far enemy shows itself in hustling, shows itself in working for approval, right? With approval with people or for people, or even exaggerated pride, right? You're putting out a better image of yourself because you want people to recognize how good you are. The problem is the near enemy is when we start to confuse modesty and insecurity with humility. Right? God doesn't call us to be insecure. We're supposed to be secure in the knowledge of him. Something Paul prayed for us multiple times. But that doesn't mean prideful. It just means confident that I am God's child and that he has saved me and that he is working all things out for my good. Right? Don't walk around in insecurity, but also don't I choose modesty. You can still be modest and proud. The next skill here is we're committed to mastery and practice. Right? In our spiritual life, this is understanding we will never be perfect on this side of heaven. Right? That we have a long way to go and we'll always have a way to go. Staying open to learning, staying open to improving. The far enemy is getting stuck in shame and fear. Right? Sometimes we don't stay open to learning because we feel that, because we're never going to make it, it's not worth it. Or I've messed up too much and there's no way I can keep growing. Or that there's no reason for me to do that. So we sit in that shame. Or we beat ourselves up for not being there already. Right? The near enemy is self-protecting with perfectionism. trying so hard to be perfect or to care about perfection more than our growth, right? That we're just trying to keep up our image with people instead of realizing, yeah, I still got areas to grow in. And lastly, our skill for developing grounded confidence. The last skill here is feeling embodied, right? Or being connected to ourselves. And this is something that we're working on in this emotional healthy spirituality. The far enemy of being disconnected from yourself is not knowing or understanding what's going on inside of yourself. Right? When you feel emotions, are you taking the time to go, why is that here? Why am I feeling this? And what am I supposed to do with that? Or are you just going, I don't need to know, and so you're disconnecting yourself from what your body is trying to inform you of. Right? Or the near enemy is thinking and acting on our emotions without ever feeling them. Right? People that are too quick to jump because of the things they're feeling and responding in inappropriate ways or reacting in wrong ways are disconnected from themselves. The therapist and embodiment facilitator, Prentice Hemphill, defines embodiment as the awareness of our body's sensations, habits, and the beliefs that inform them. Right? Do you know why you are doing the things you're doing? Embodiment requires the ability to feel and to allow the body's emotions. This embodied awareness is necessary to realign what we do with what we believe. Now, disembodiment is the opposite, right? It's the unawareness. It's the repression or denial of our sensations and emotions. We are giving privilege to our thinking over our feeling. Those people are like, well, I'm only going to think about the facts. I'm not going to feel the facts. We've already talked about how that's untrue. Disembodiment often leads to an incongruence between our actions that we take in the world and the beliefs that we hold. Now, I think when I started reading this, I realized, man, this is a really important thing in Christianity that we've lost. Right? I mean, it's probably not you, right? But have you ever seen another Christian do something like, that's not very Christian? Right? Again, you've never done it. Okay, I get it. Right? Because I've never either. Right? But somebody else, some other Christians, like doing something, you're like, that action doesn't belong in the Christian faith. But when you go talk to them about it, they're like, no, I'm a Christian. I'm loving. I'm doing the things. Right? It's because they are disconnected. We're disembodied from the beliefs that they hold and the ways that we act. We talk about it in Christianity often, and things you maybe have heard it as compartmentalizing our faith, right? It only affects our spiritual side, but the rest of our lives we get to do whatever we want with, and so therefore our actions are not reflective of our faith, and it's because we are disconnected with who we are, right? You're probably doing those things, and you're like, I do feel a little bit of tension or something there, but it's not taking the time to be connected and realize what's going on, then we are often living out values that are different than what we believe or values that we thought we held. Romans 12:2 says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Right? Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Right? We cannot be transformed if we don't first realize that we have need to be transformed. Right? Then we can start to renew our mind. Then we can get our values lined up with God's, and then our actions will follow. But if we don't recognize the disconnect in our actions from what we believe and those things that are happening in us, then we probably will never really look like Christ. I'm starting to realize maybe Christians are they're a lot less hypocrites than the world says about them. We're just actually disembodied. Right? We're emotionally unhealthy. And so we're not looking like Christ, even though we believe we are. All right, so first, we need to develop grounded confidence to be able to build meaningful connections. Secondly, we need to practice the courage to walk alongside. Okay, practice the courage to walk alongside. Ephesians 4:2 says, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Right? To me, this practice of walking alongside is the same in what Scripture says when we are supposed to bear with one another in love. That is what that is trying to say, right? So I don't know about you guys. There's not a lot of farmers in California, like ranch farmers or things like that, and I honestly have no idea what I'm talking about either. So, I have an idea. I just didn't experience it growing up either. I didn't live on a farm, so despite what you believe about Iowa, we have cities. Okay, and my first vehicle was not a tractor. I've seen an airplane before. All right, but a yoke. This was this object that they still use today, but a lot less because we have tractors. But that bound two animals together, or pairs of animals together, so that they would pull the weight of whatever they were trying to carry, whether it be plowing or just a trailer full of stuff or whatever it was. They had this yoke that would go over both of them, and it would connect them together so that they could bear the load, whatever it was, together, alongside. Right now, they may have done rows of these and things, but they were all connected side by side by these yokes so that one can't pull more than the other. And so they have to pull together and go through this. And when we are being directed here to bear with one another in love, and as multiple of the scriptures we've read today have said that phrase of bearing with one another, that's what it means to be able to say, hey buddy, I see your burden, and I want to come under that yoke with you and have the courage to walk alongside you and bear with you whatever you're pulling, whatever you're going through, whatever the hardship is at that moment. Now, it says to practice the courage of walking alongside of you. And some of you say, well, I don't need courage to do that. But the reality is it's fear that keeps you from doing it, right? It's the fear that you won't have the strength to help. It's fear that that mess could be a lot more than you thought. It's fear that, what will others think of you if I put on the same yoke as this other person, right? And carry their garbage, and their baggage of life. But we need to be an encouragement. We need to bear with people. Now, the far enemy of bearing with someone, of walking alongside them, is just staying far away from people, right? You can't walk alongside them if you're a mile away. And so that's the far enemy. That's the complete opposite of what we're supposed to do. And so some people here and even in church, they separate themselves. They maybe come in on Sunday and then they get out of here as quick as possible. Some people come in late. I know people who purposefully come in late so they don't have to talk to people, and then they jet out of here as I'm praying at the end, so they don't have to talk with people. And that is the opposite of bearing with one another in love, right? Right? But this also includes discounting what other people are going through. When they're like, do you see the load that I'm bearing? And you have that opportunity to step in and bear with them, and you say, that's not that much of a load. Right? I think you should be able to do that by yourself. Ignoring, dismissing, all of those things. That is the same as just walking away from them in the first place. Now, the near enemy is controlling the path. Right? Instead of walking alongside, you try and step in front of them to show them how they're supposed to be doing it. Or you step behind them and you're pushing them in the right direction. Sometimes it can look and feel like someone is with us, but really they're there trying to control us or control the outcome. Brene Brown shares a simple story of what she went through trying to learn this. And she says her daughter came home from school one day and was just kind of beside herself, working through a lot of things. And she had gotten in trouble at school. Okay, the daughter had gotten in trouble, and she was being disrespectful to the teacher. She was talking while the teacher was talking. Right? And Brene Brown, instead of sitting with her daughter in her emotions and saying, yeah, I can see how that is frustrating, let's talk through that, went immediately to, I wonder what that teacher thinks of my parenting. Right? I wonder what people are thinking of me now that my child is doing those things. And so forget about asking or checking with the daughter. She says, you need to send an email right now and apologize to your teacher. Right? It looks like she's helping the daughter. Hey, this will help you when you, right? Because we could say that, hey, you know what would help this situation for you? If you emailed the teacher and apologized again. But the reality, Brene Brown was really I want her to apologize because I want her to think she's got a good mom. Right? And we help people because we want to control people in the situations sometimes. The novelist Anne Lamott literally said, help is the sunny side of control. right? Help can easily become a nice attempt at control of managing environments and outcomes, right? Things like it's in everyone's best interest for you to do this, and I'm helping you that. But all of a sudden, it's not their best interest; it's everybody's, or it's yours, or there's another interest at play. Whose best interest are you really protecting? Control always comes back to self, right? I see people whose personal lives are out of control in some ways. So they find projects, they find other people that they can help in an attempt to really just be in control of something. And so they become codependent on helping other people try and do their lives right because they've lost control in other places of their lives. I'm sure you guys have never seen that, you know. So there's some skills that we can practice here in this idea of the courage to walk alongside. And that's being committed to being others-focused. Right? The far enemy here is defaulting to self, right? Of just being self-focused, right? If we're not going to take the interest in other people, then it's going to be really hard to find the courage to walk alongside them. When someone shares a problem as your first response, that's not my problem. That might be a sign that you need to make some adjustments. Or is your first response to tell them that you have so much going on that you can't help them? You don't have time. Right? Or maybe your first response is telling them how their problem's causing you problems. When a conflict comes up or something uncomfortable, are you quick to tell those people how they become a problem to you? The near enemy here is performing concern. Right? You're performing the concern. You're not really concerned, but you actually want to control the situation because you realize it could benefit you if you help. Or we just distance ourselves. We get out of the way. Galatians 6:2-3, here it is again. It says, share each other's burdens. In this way, you obey the law of Christ. Did you realize that? When we are not coming alongside other people and saying, hey, let me take that yoke with you, and you and me and Jesus, we're going to carry this thing and we're going to help you through it. When we don't do that, we are not fulfilling the law of Christ. We are not then therefore doing the greatest commandments. Right? Loving God and loving others means bearing with other people. And when we are not doing that, we are missing out on what God has called us to do, the main things. If you think you're too important to help someone, you're fooling yourself. You are not that important. Skill 2 here is practicing compassion. Right, the far enemy is cruelty towards people for issues, right? Like instead of having compassion on what they're going through, you just beat them up. The people like to kick other people when they're down. That is the far enemy of compassion. But also, so is creating distance. So is separating and disconnecting from them or treating people like they're invisible. Right? That is not showing compassion when you're just like, there's no problems going on here in my life. Jesus was moved with compassion. Right? Splachnizomai. We've talked about that before. The Greek word for a movement of his bowels that drew him to help people. That was how he walked through life, seeing people. It says multiple times he saw them and they were lost and they were hurting and they were afraid. They were sheep without shepherds. And so I went to them and I healed them and I spoke to them. We should have eyes of compassion to the people and the needs around us. And that draws us to them. Now, the near enemy of compassion is showing pity or comparing suffering, right? Some of us feel often that we are really good at showing compassion for people when really what we show is pity. They're near enemies. It means they're really close on the scale of emotions. They're very similar to have compassion or have pity. The difference is that pity comes when we feel bad for them because they are in a lesser or a poorer situation. Right? Because what pity does is say they are less than us. I feel bad for the situation they are in because it's less than what I have. Compassion is just, I'm feeling bad because of what's going on in your life. Instead of viewing them as an equal human to us and being moved to help, we have pity because we view them as lesser than us. I would say that most people feel pity for the homeless people in our community, not compassion. Right? And I think that that's a good example because I know that I found myself when I was reading through this, trying to figure out where have I shown pity and not compassion, and often it's towards their situations, right? I feel bad for them because their life isn't what my life is, right? They have less than me. Their lives are less, and so it feels like compassion because my heart is moved to help them. Right? I'm not looking down on them because I don't want to help. I feel driven to help them, but it's out of pity, not out of compassion. And so be careful when we are practicing compassion that we are not practicing pity. We are practicing actual compassion, right? Remember, they have the same value we have. In God's eyes, we are exactly the same. Be moved with compassion. Skill 3 is practicing empathy. Now, empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Right? Really listening to what they are going through and feeling those same emotions. The far enemy of empathy is creating distance, separation, disconnection, treating other people like they're invisible, okay? That same thing, right? You can't be empathetic if you just get away from them, right? And that's the far enemy. Now here, listen to this though. The near enemy is defaulting to sympathy. Right, or other near empathy misses. But I think sympathy is one that we fall to most. Sympathy is compassion. It's feeling for them, not feeling with them. Right? Empathy and sympathy, I think the easiest ways to decipher whether you're feeling one or the other is, right, like sympathy likes to hide behind like the silver lining encouragement for people, where you're trying to point them to like the positive things of their situation because you're not really feeling with them, right? It takes being removed from the situation to be able to say, yeah, but do you see the positives happening here? And sometimes that's okay, right? That's still compassion. That's still being moved because you care about them. But often what people need is empathy, somebody to say, like, wow, I see how you're feeling. I can feel that similar. Maybe it involves sharing a story where you've felt similar, but not the positive side of it, right? Could you imagine Job's friends in the Bible showing up and silver lining his life? Right, but this is what we do. This is our first action, right? Okay, so Job is an Old Testament book, and the basis of the story is that Job is living a pretty good Christian life. He's doing what he's supposed to do, and the devil says, well, God says, well, Job only follows you because his life is good. And God says, no, Job's a good servant of mine. And so the devil says, well, then let me rough up his life a little bit. And God's like, fine, it's fine. Like, do that because I know he'll still choose me. Right? And so Job in one day loses everything. Literally, like his house is burned down, every building he had, his job as a farmer. You know, he was one of the first homesteaders, you know, that we're all trying to be now. You know, he lost all of his animals, his gardens, all of the things that was going to provide for his life he lost. On top of that, he lost all of his children. On top of that, he lost his health. His bodies and his wife's body were just covered in sores that were incredibly painful. Okay, so in one day, lost everything. Could you even imagine? Like, it's hard to empathize with that, right? Because I haven't lost everything in one day. And Job's friends get there, and what they do is they empathize with him. They don't even know what to say, so they sit with him for 6 days in quiet. They actually dirtied up their faces and things and mourned with him. Right? But today, I think we would have shown up and been like, I can't believe you're not feeling better yet. You know, what's going on, man? Probably one of our first responses would have been, well, at least you're still alive. Right? Yeah, to be honest with yourselves here, like this is what we've been trained to do. But you know what Job said about his life after all that happened? Cursed be the day that I was born. Man, that I wish I wasn't alive. And do you realize that often when you try and silver line somebody's situation, that you're actually pointing out the thing that hurts them the most? Job didn't want to be alive. And usually the one positive thing you try and point out in someone is usually things that's actually hurting him the most. Because Job's biggest thing was, I would rather have died and let all my kids live. Than my wife still been provided for, than my wife had good health, than for me to be alive right now. We need to practice empathy. Right? Don't just show up and try and encourage people by always pointing them to the nice things. Silver lining is often not as helpful as we feel. The fourth skill is practicing non-judgment, right? I think it's back. Okay. Being an emotional scientist, right? The far enemy of being non-judgment is being judgmental, right? It's a pretty simple one. The near enemy is performing non-judgment, right? Often we're like, yeah, I know I'm not supposed to judge, so I'm going to not judge. But then later I'm going to go judge to my spouse. You know, what the situation was, or to my friend. This shows its way in gossiping or blaming or holding grudges for things, reacting to other people who are undeserving of the situation because you didn't react there in that moment. These things are the near enemy of being non-judgmental. And we, as emotional scientists, we come in and not to judge the situation, but we come in with wonder to experience, why is this stuff happening in your life? And often we see people's situations and we want to judge. Well, wow, I'm sure I can guess how you got yourself there. I'm sure that, if you would have just done these things right, it all would have worked out, but you didn't. Right? And we judge instead of coming in with wonder and asking why. The fifth thing is sharing power with and power to. Martin Luther King Jr.'s definition of power, of influence, is the ability to achieve purpose and affect change, right? We often think of people holding power as being maybe kind of a negative thing, but power in itself is just a tool. It exists in every relationship we have. It exists in every community that you're a part of. There is power there, and it can be used for good or bad, and that really just is dependent on how it's used. Now, power with is based on mutual support. We have power together to accomplish these things. Right? We understand our differences, but we always say we can share this power together to accomplish something. Power to is based on the belief that every individual has the power to make a difference. Right? And like we preach here is that everybody has been made on purpose with a purpose, right? You've been purposefully purposed because you are a masterpiece. That Ephesians 2:10 says that God is designed for the good things planned in advance, right? We all carry power to affect things, and we need to recognize that within our community. Now, the far enemy is leveraging power over. That's the bad thing. Power over is dangerous because it's using disproportional influence to achieve gain, to do things better for yourself because you have the power. Now, the near enemy, as we've talked about here, is helping when we're actually trying to control others. Whether we're controlling the person that we're helping or we're trying to control other people's expectations or perceptions of us or the outcomes. We have to be really careful to see where our desire to help others is coming from. Is it to make you feel good? Is it because I don't want others to say something? Is it because if I help, I can get something out of it? Or am I using power over? Skill 6 is being relational, right? You can't walk alongside someone if you're not being relational. It's pretty as simple as that. You have to be somebody who pursues community. The far enemy is disengaging or disconnecting, avoiding community. The near enemy, though, is being transactional. A lot of us think we're relational, but we're only doing it because we get something out of it. That's transactional. That is not relational. And skill 7 is setting and respecting boundaries. And this is important here because if you talked about, we've talked about how we create distance and separation sometimes. And some of us, what we really want to do is create a boundary. We just don't know how. And so we create distance. And a distance and creating separation is not a boundary. That's building a wall. A complete separation from someone. Now, this is important because Christians, we feel that we have to be available to everyone at all times. But that's not true. Jesus made space for himself to get away from things, to spend time with God, to be alone. But he also made time to do miracles, to teach people, to hang out with his disciples and mentor them. Right? He knew when to say no and when to say yes. Now, some of us, we only want to do the skill of saying no, right? No, none of you guys, right? We have to remember that we are called to community and we're called to be relational. We're called to be there for each other, so we have to have that space in our life too. Now, but we also can have boundaries where we create that space for us to be with God or be with our family and things as well. Now, the far enemy of boundaries is building walls, but it also can be being enmeshed, right? Where we don't have any separation from the people that we are trying to help, and all of our value and identity and parts of our life come from the community that we're in. But we don't have the things that make us who we are found in God. We can either get too involved in people's lives that it's really codependency, right? You're like, I need the drama. I need to be a part of what's happening there. I need to feel needed, so I'm going to help all these people that are hurting, and we get ourselves in the middle of other people's lives. Or the complete opposite, where we're like, I don't want to be involved in anybody's mess, so we create walls, boundaries, instead of boundaries, to keep people away. Now, the near enemy is very similar. We can be enmeshed, again, as a near enemy and say, look, I am helping everybody. I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to, and we have no boundaries still. But the near enemy here is choosing to distance ourselves without ever communicating expectations. A boundary is communicated. Space, walls are not communicated. That's just when we distance ourselves from people because we're like, I don't want to be a part of what's going on anymore. I can't get involved in your mess, and so we just create distance. Boundaries are communicated. Boundaries say, hey, I need some space, and this is why. I need to spend some more time with my family, and I just can't be involved in everything that's going on in your life all of the time. But I can help you on Tuesday. Or I do have these evenings available to help you. Or how about, this set time I can be there for you. Those are boundaries. Now, when we're just like, I'm just going to never respond to that text ever again. And that's not boundaries, okay? That is avoiding what God has called us to do, okay? Now, maybe you need a boundary of we need separation for a while. That's fine. Just communicate it, okay? Now, the third skill set we're going to talk about next week, okay? Some of you guys heard me say 30, you're like, I'm ready to leave. The third skill set is eating lunch today. Fourth skill set we'll talk about next week. Now, but that's to be a good listener. We need to be better listeners to build meaningful connection. But I'm going to end with this today. Brene Brown said, our connection with others can only be as deep as our connection with ourselves. Now, I'll add in here that our connection with God. Right? Because everything we are as Christians is first and foremost defined by God and through God. And we first need to start there in our connection with him. But again, as Christians in our world, we really compartmentalize that. And so we're not connected with ourselves. As you've probably experienced as we've been going through our emotional healthy series here, you realize, I didn't realize all this stuff was going on inside of me, and then I need to recognize that. That's all part of being able to build better relationships. I can say that for Vic and I, just literally, like, as I'm going through this, I'm learning, okay? I'm no expert. That's why I'm constantly quoting other people, because I'm trying to learn this, okay? I don't want you to look at me like, whoa, that guy just knows so much. I know nothing, okay? I'm here, I'm figuring it out. That's why I'm like, I have an example from the past week for every one of these things, because I'm still figuring these things out. But as I'm learning and we are walking through this with you guys, I know that our relationship has been able to be brought deeper. This is my wife. Some of you guys are like, I don't even understand. Victoria's my wife. And me and this stranger, we're so much, no. But like our marriage has been brought to a deeper place because we are learning to be able to communicate everything that we're feeling. Right? Literally, the story I was talking about, how I'm really honestly disappointed with God right now. And that's a way that I feel. And I'm walking through that, but I couldn't tell her that. And so I was communicating a false narrative, because I don't want her to see that my faith is doubting and I'm supposed to be the spiritual leader and all these things. And when I'm not like feeling I can lead, I don't want to put that weight on her. And so, right, this is the real life application of everything we're talking about. Right? You guys are like, oh, it's so nice and easy. It sounds good when I write it on paper. But the reality is, it took me over a day before I was finally like, this is actually, I think, what's going on. And part of that was because I wasn't taking time to look inside of me and say, why am I actually feeling this way? But then once I'm able to express it, she's able to support me. It's brought us deeper. We've been, this week's been really good for us, though it started off really rough because I wasn't being as open as I thought. This is why these things are important. right? We need to have that deep understanding of ourselves along with God to be able to have deep relationships with one another. Everyone deserves to have meaningful connection, right? To be seen, to be heard, especially in moments of deep emotions and pain and suffering. Right? We've kind of become accustomed to like avoiding people's pain. Right? When someone's going through something, it's like, don't look over there, you know. So our neighbor passed away unexpectedly yesterday morning. They found him, and it's somebody that we've been reaching out to and inviting to church and been meeting with, praying for, and things, and it's just very unexpected. And everything in me humanly wanted to just avoid their house, right? And they had, I don't know, 100 people at their house all day yesterday, probably could barely get in my driveway. And it's like, because we just want to avoid people's pain and discomfort. But we were like, we should probably take a moment and go over and just let them know that we're praying for them and that we're there for them. And so we met his brother that was there for it and was able to talk with him and just let him know, man, Mondo was really good to us. He was a great neighbor, and we were going to miss him too. And he was, this guy I've never met, he's crying, and just, thank you. And we were able to talk to his mom, just let him know, like, we're here if you need anything. But man, it's hard to look pain in the eye sometimes, but that's what we need. That's when we need people the most. And so we got to get past that in ourselves. One of the things that I like about this is that she is very clear and to say practice it and develop it, right? Because you're never going to become perfect at it. It's going to take a lot of intentionality and a lot of practice, and a lot of mistakes and a lot of trying again. And we got to practice this because it's going to make us better people, better representations of Christ. Into this world, we need this. And so put it into practice today. Don't just forget about these things. Put them into practice and practice them. Develop them, as she was saying these words, right? We're developing grounded confidence, and we're practicing walking alongside people. So we have to put them into practice. And this was Jesus' prayer for us, guys. John 17, verse 20 through 21. Jesus says, I am praying not only for these disciples, but for all who will ever believe in me through their message. That's us. And I pray that they will all be one, just as you and I are one, as you are in me, Father, and I am in you. And may they be in us, so that the world will believe you sent me. Now, I don't believe that we can be unified and follow Jesus' prayer until we have meaningful connection, because you can't be unified with someone that you don't know, that you don't understand what's going on inside of them on that deeper level, right? Jesus said, as I am in the Father and as the Father is in me. That is a deep and meaningful connection. And that's what we need with one another. So I'm going to pray in a moment, but before we pray, I got like 2 more hours of stuff to say. But speaking of deep and meaningful relationships here to our church, Frank and Vicky, this is their last Sunday with us before they decided to leave us and not have meaningful connection. No, just kidding. They are moving because of Frank's job, and first I'll say that you guys will be very missed by us, and we are very appreciative of the meaningful connection that you have made with us as a community here at Generations Church. You will be incredibly missed, and as I pray, I also want to pray a blessing over them. So if anybody, kind of off by themselves, they're not practicing things today, but if some people could go and surround them as we pray here. And before you leave, we have a gift for you, and Shelly will get that to you. So don't leave without that, because you need more stuff to move to Texas with you. But if you guys were here for our Easter egg hunt thing, you guys maybe didn't know she was our Easter bunny. And she did a great job with that too. But they've served in many places, been part of the men's group, showing up to help with things on the worship team, and just being really involved. And so they were a great example for the rest of us. So God, we thank you for today. We thank you that you've provided all of these people with us, Lord, that we can't look around and say we're alone. We have a group of people right here that have said, I want to be committed to the other people in this church. God, and I pray that you would help us to understand what it means to have that kind of meaningful connection, something that's deeper than just the acquaintances that we come and we could say hi on Sunday mornings, but that we would be involved in our lives, that we would be open about the things going on, and that we would share freely with one another, Lord. God, I pray that you would help us to find our grounded confidence in you, that we wouldn't be people that have to prove and know or hide our fragile self-worth, but that we would understand how valuable we are from you, God, and that we would be able to walk in that and be able to really get involved in the lives of one another. Lord, that we wouldn't feel that we have to hide it behind a false image, but share who we are, Lord, and that you would give us the courage to walk alongside one another and bear with each other's burdens. God, and I pray for Frank and for Vicky as they are leaving our community here, God, that you would give them favor, that you would give them many blessings as they embark on a new adventure and build new community, Lord. And I pray that you would lead them to a good group of believers who want meaningful connection with them, God, and get involved in their lives and help bear their burdens, Lord, and that they be able to bear the burdens of those around them, God. Thank you for the blessing that they've been to our community here, God, and may they continue to be a blessing wherever they go. God, we're so grateful for you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right, so let's go and build meaningful